Imagine waking up in a world where survival is never guaranteed. There are no cities, no houses, no roads, only endless forests, freezing winds, and massive animals roaming the land. This was the world of the Neanderthals. For hundreds of thousands of years, these ancient humans lived across Europe and parts of Asia. They survived brutal winters, hunted dangerous animals, and adapted to an environment that would be extremely difficult even for modern humans. But what was their life really like? Many people imagine Neanderthals as primitive cave dwellers who barely survived in a harsh world, but the reality is far more complex. Neanderthals were strong, intelligent, and incredibly resilient. They lived during the Ice Age, a time when glaciers covered large parts of the northern hemisphere. Temperatures were far colder than today. Winters lasted longer, and food was often difficult to find. Every single day required effort just to stay alive. The bodies of Neanderthals were built for this world. Compared to modern humans, they were shorter, but much stronger. Their bones were thicker, their muscles more powerful, and their chests wider. Their short limbs helped them conserve heat during freezing temperatures. These physical traits made them perfectly adapted for cold environments. But surviving the Ice Age required much more than strong bodies. The most important challenge was finding food. Neanderthals were hunters, and not just hunters of small animals. They hunted some of the largest creatures that ever walked the earth. Woolly mammoths, giant deer, wild horses, massive bison. Hunting animals of this size required cooperation and planning. A single hunter would never stand a chance against such powerful creatures. Neanderthals hunted in small groups, working together to surround and attack their prey. Using stone spears and carefully crafted tools, they would approach animals at close range before striking. This was extremely dangerous. Many Neanderthal skeletons discovered by scientists show signs of serious injuries. Broken ribs, damaged arms, and healed fractures suggest that hunting often resulted in accidents. Yet many of these injuries healed. This tells us something remarkable about Neanderthal society. They cared for each other. If a hunter was injured during a hunt, the group did not abandon him. Instead, they protected and helped him recover. In a harsh environment where survival was difficult, cooperation was essential. Neanderthals lived in small groups, usually consisting of families and close relatives. These groups moved across landscapes following animal migrations and searching for food sources. Sometimes they lived in caves. Caves provided natural protection from wind, rain, and snow. Inside these caves, Neanderthals built fires that kept them warm and provided light during long nights. Fire was one of the most important tools for survival. With fire, they could cook meat, making it easier to digest and providing more energy. Fire also kept dangerous predators away. Around the fire, Neanderthals likely shared stories, knowledge, and experiences. But caves were not the only places they lived. In open landscapes, Neanderthals sometimes built shelters from wood, animal bones, and hides. These simple structures protected them from cold winds and storms. Life during the Ice Age required constant movement. Animals migrated across vast territories, and Neanderthals often followed these migrations. Their stone tools were essential for survival. Neanderthals created advanced stone tools using a technique known as the Mousterian tool tradition. These tools included sharp blades, scrapers, and spear points. With these tools, they could butcher animals, prepare hides for clothing, and craft weapons for hunting. Clothing was extremely important in cold climates. Neanderthals used animal skins to protect themselves from freezing temperatures. By carefully scraping and preparing hides, they created warm coverings that allowed them to survive brutal winters. But survival was not just about physical strength and tools. Neanderthals also had complex social lives. Evidence suggests that they buried their dead. Archaeologists have discovered Neanderthal burial sites where bodies were placed carefully into the ground. In some cases, objects or flowers were placed near the body. This suggests that Neanderthals may have had early forms of symbolic thinking or spiritual beliefs. They were not simply primitive creatures struggling to survive. They were humans with emotions, relationships, and social bonds. Neanderthals also cared for children and elders. In such harsh environments, raising children required patience and cooperation. Younger members of the group learned hunting skills, tool-making, and survival techniques from older generations. Knowledge was passed down through experience. Every hunt, every winter, every migration taught them new lessons about survival. For thousands of years, this way of life continued. Neanderthals adapted to changing climates and environments. But eventually, something changed. Around 40,000 years ago, Neanderthals began to disappear. Scientists still debate why this happened. One possible explanation is climate change. The Ice Age climate was unstable, and rapid environmental changes may have made survival more difficult. Another possibility involves modern humans. Around the same time, Homo sapiens began spreading across Europe and Asia. Modern humans may have competed with Neanderthals for resources, hunting territories, and shelter. Some scientists believe conflict may have occurred between these groups. But the story is not so simple. Genetic research has revealed something surprising. Neanderthals and modern humans actually interbred. Today, many people around the world carry small amounts of Neanderthal DNA in their genes. This means that Neanderthals did not completely disappear. A part of them still exists within us. Their legacy lives on through human evolution. For hundreds of thousands of years, Neanderthals survived in one of the most extreme environments humans have ever faced. They hunted dangerous animals, endured brutal winters, and built communities that supported one another. They were not primitive monsters, they were survivors. And their story is one of resilience, adaptation, and the incredible ability of humans to endure even the harshest conditions. When we look back at the world of the Neanderthals, we are not just looking at a lost species, we are looking at a chapter of our own history. A reminder that long before civilization, before cities and technology, humans survived through cooperation, intelligence, and determination. The fires that once burned inside Neanderthal caves may be gone, but their story still echoes through time. And in many ways, that story is still part of us today. But the story of Neanderthals does not end there. For many years, scientists believed that Neanderthals simply vanished without leaving any trace. They were often described as primitive humans who failed to survive in a changing world. But modern discoveries have completely changed the way we understand them. Today, archaeologists continue to uncover new evidence that reveals how complex Neanderthal life truly was. One of the most fascinating discoveries is that Neanderthals were far more intelligent and adaptable than people once believed. Their brains were actually slightly larger than those of modern humans. This does not necessarily mean they were smarter, but it does show that their cognitive abilities were highly developed. Neanderthals understood their environment deeply. They could recognize patterns in animal movement, seasonal changes, and weather conditions. This knowledge allowed them to plan hunts and survive in landscapes that were constantly changing. In many ways, their survival depended on observation. Every detail of the natural world mattered. The direction of the wind, the sound of distant animals, or the movement of birds could provide important clues about what was happening in the surrounding environment. Neanderthal hunters had to remain extremely alert. When hunting large animals such as mammoths or bison, even the smallest mistake could be fatal. These animals were enormous and powerful, capable of injuring or killing a hunter with a single movement. Because of this danger, cooperation was essential. Groups of hunters would work together, communicating through gestures and sounds. They would attempt to guide animals into difficult terrain, cliffs, or narrow valleys where escape is harder. Once the animal was trapped or slowed down, the hunters would move closer and strike with their spears. This required courage. It also required trust. Every hunter depended on the others for protection and support. Without teamwork, such hunts would have been impossible. After a successful hunt, the work was far from finished. The animal had to be processed quickly before predators arrived. Wolves, cave lions, and hyenas often followed the smell of fresh blood. Neanderthals had to work efficiently to cut meat and transport valuable parts back to their shelter. This was where their tools became extremely important. Neanderthal stone tools were carefully shaped to create sharp cutting edges. Some tools were designed specifically for scraping animal hides, while others were ideal for cutting meat or breaking bones. These tools allowed them to use nearly every part of the animal. Meat provided food. Bones could be shaped into tools. Animal skins became clothing or shelter coverings. Nothing was wasted. This efficiency was one of the reasons Neanderthals were able to survive in environments where resources were limited. Another important aspect of their survival was their ability to control fire. Fire was more than just warmth. It created a safe place in the darkness. In the cold world of the Ice Age, nights could be long and dangerous. Predators often moved under the cover of darkness. A strong fire could discourage animals from approaching too close. Fire also allowed Neanderthals to cook food. Cooking made meat easier to digest and allowed the body to absorb more nutrients. This provided more energy, which was essential in a cold environment where the body burned calories quickly. But fire may have had another role as well. Many scientists believe that evenings around the fire were moments when Neanderthals shared knowledge and experiences. Older members of the group could pass down lessons learned from past hunts or migrations. Stories may have been told, memories shared. In these quiet moments, knowledge moved from one generation to the next. This passing of knowledge was critical for survival. Young Neanderthals had to learn quickly. They needed to understand how to track animals, recognize edible plants, build tools, and stay safe in dangerous environments. Childhood in the Ice Age was very different from today. Children likely began learning survival skills from an early age. They observed adults carefully and slowly practiced the same techniques. Over time, they became hunters, gatherers, and protectors of the group. This cycle repeated itself, generation after generation. For hundreds of thousands of years, Neanderthals adapted to a world that was constantly changing. Ice advanced and retreated. Forests appeared and disappeared. Animals migrated across vast territories, and through it all, Neanderthals continued to survive. Yet eventually their numbers began to decline. Around 40,000 years ago, Neanderthals started disappearing from the archaeological record. Their tools became rarer. Their settlements vanished. For a long time, Scientists wondered what caused this disappearance. Today, researchers believe the answer is likely complex. Climate change may have played a role. The Ice Age climate was unstable, with sudden shifts in temperature that transformed landscapes quickly. These environmental changes may have reduced the availability of animals and plants that Neanderthals depended on. At the same time, another group of humans was spreading across the same territories. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, had begun migrating into Europe and parts of Asia. These newcomers brought slightly different technologies and hunting strategies. Competition for resources may have increased. In some regions, Neanderthals and modern humans likely encountered each other. Sometimes, these encounters may have been peaceful. Other times, they may have been tense. But one surprising discovery has changed how scientists view this relationship. Neanderthals and modern humans did not simply compete. They also mixed. Genetic studies have revealed that modern humans outside Africa carry small amounts of Neanderthal DNA. This means that thousands of years ago, the two groups interacted closely enough to have children together. In a sense, Neanderthals never completely disappeared. A part of them continues to live inside the human population today. Fragments of their DNA remain within us. This discovery transformed our understanding of human history. Instead of a simple story where one species replaces another, the past appears far more connected. Human history is not just a story of extinction, it is also a story of interaction and shared ancestry. The world of the Neanderthals may seem distant and unfamiliar, but their struggles were deeply human. They faced hunger, cold, danger, and uncertainty, yet they survived for hundreds of thousands of years in some of the harshest environments on Earth. Their story reminds us that survival often depends on cooperation, adaptability, and knowledge. These qualities helped Neanderthals endure the Ice Age, and they continue to define humanity today. Even though the Neanderthal world disappeared long ago, traces of it remain all around us, hidden in ancient caves, preserved in stone tools, and carried quietly within our own DNA. In many ways, the story of the Neanderthals is not just about the past. It is part of the long journey of humanity itself.